Is boldenon, equipoise, kidney toxic? That's what they're saying. Find out what I got to say about it next. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute weekly question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions, be it bodybuilding, be it non-bodybuilding, be it diet, training, supplementation. If you have questions about IFBB Pros contest, obviously this past weekend, the big Pittsburgh Pro, Dave and I, as well as Chris Aceto, were there on hand. Got some excellent content, which you have on the channel right now. We did pre-judging and finals recaps with Dave, with Chris, and seven-time Mr. Olympia, Phil Heath. So you do not want to miss that. He had a lot of Phil had a lot of golden things to say, about Nick Walker, about Derek, about the decision, and about just about everything else in and around the Pittsburgh Pro. We have interviews, pre-show interviews with Derek Lunsford, Martin Fitzwater, and of course, Nick Walker. So again, all that on the channel, as well as new episodes of the After Hours podcast, and then Heavy Muscle Radio, Dave and Chris doing a full digest of the 2025 Pittsburgh Pro, with the show, Expo, the whole show, an absolute success. And it was a real fun time to be there. So again, all the content from that on the channel. Let's go to the questions. The first two questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question: how to bulk up if you have GERD? You can't really eat much, also small meals. This is a new thing I have struggled with. Any ideas would be helpful.
Yeah, GERD is a gastroesophageal syndrome, essentially. What happens is you get acid goes up into your esophagus and burns your esophagus. So obviously the more food in your stomach, the more it can push up there. A lot of times it happens because we have what's called a hiatal hernia. So the esophagus is the food tube. So you swallow, and then the esophagus is a long tube, and it goes through your diaphragm, which is a flat muscle. And when it goes through the diaphragm into the stomach, the problem is that the esophagus is normally pinned between the diaphragm muscle, but a lot of times it could get herniated. And so what happens is, instead of being glued here, essentially it moves. And when it moves and the diaphragm muscle contracts, it pushes the food back up into your throat and into the upper part of the esophagus, where it shouldn't be, because the stomach has acids in it, and those acids come back up. And it's not just acid indigestion, it's actually burning the esophagus. And that could actually lead to esophageal cancer down the road. So it's not a good thing. It's not fun for people who have it. And what I recommend that people do is eat smaller, more frequent meals. So if you eat, a small meal, but you eat it more frequently. So let's say you need to eat, 500 grams of protein for the day, and you're like, I just can't do it with my GERD. But normally you would do that over 6 meals. But if you try to do it over 8 or 10 small meals, and I know that's a pain in the ass, but look, if you have that as a limitation on yourself, you have to figure out a way to get around it. If you don't, then you might as well just give up bodybuilding, right? Because if you can't eat enough food, number one, you're not going to grow, and number two, when you're dieting, you're not going to retain your muscle mass. So don't make medical conditions you have be a limitation on yourself. Find a way around it, and the best way around it is small, frequent meals.
Second question, again, these two from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. At 6 weeks out, I'm starting to decrease my carbs. I was doing 17 grams carbs per meal, 7 meals the way I do. Is taking away from the last meal, top to bottom. I know you said it's better just to space it out equally, but I feel my body responds better like this. However, when I was doing carbs in my last meal, my glucose level were at 96 fasted since I decreased my last meal carbs. My sugar levels are 81. That means this is the best way to do it in my bulking season. If this is, what do you think?
I mean, if you're controlling your blood sugars, with not eating carbs at the last meal, then do it. I mean, as long as you're getting the right amount of carbs for the day. So, whether you spread it over 5 meals or 6 meals or 7 meals, it doesn't really matter. I'm just against putting it into, like, some guys will eat all their carbs in 2 meals, pre-workout and post-workout. That's ridiculous. If you're finding that you're having high fasting blood sugars in the morning and you want to, get rid of those, and you can, limit carbs in the last meal, I have no problem with that. That's not going to affect your gain. So I think that's perfect. These are very good questions, by the way, these first 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. I've been getting a lot of people telling me, Dave, I love that app. It's such a good source of information. All your protocols are on there. All your drug cycles are on there. All the articles you've written are on there. It's organized in a really, easy to read manner to find the stuff we want. We love that you answer everyone's questions in an open forum so that everyone gets to see everyone's questions and answers. It's a really big learning experience. Plus, they love the extra video. It's like they get an extra Ask Dave video every single week. I never miss, although I owe 2 this week. But the point is, it's a constant learning experience. And for $29 a month, you download it at your iTunes store or your Android app store, and you get Dave Palumbo in your back pocket. You guys have been supporting the app for several years now. We've been doing this. We have a lot of members. Thank you. It does make me a few extra bucks, and that does inspire me to keep doing this thing. So if you haven't subscribed already, try it. Try it for a month. No, there's no strings attached. I think you'll really love it, and you'll continue doing it. And once again, that will encourage me to keep doing it as well. So thank you.
Before we go to the rest of our questions, our friends at Titan Medical, Dave, have a 10% off all their medical weight loss therapies. So again, you have that fully displayed right there. And as always, if you call 727-389-3220 or get through them at titanmedicalcenter.com, mention Dave Palumbo, RxMuscle, and of course, they will hook you up.
Yeah, these GLP-1, especially peptides, the ones that like are Ozempic, Mounjaro, the new, Tirzepatide, they're amazing. If you're a cheater on your diet and you like to, snack in between meals because you're always hungry, these GLP-1 agonists are absolutely going to change your life. And I know a lot of women and a couple men that are like that, and it's changed their life. If you're like me, like a regimented lunatic where you never actually eat an extra morsel of food, you probably won't notice quite as much in terms of fat loss. But for a lot of people, it's very hard, especially they have jobs, they're hungry all day, and they can't stick to the diet. These modalities are phenomenal. And I'm telling you, they're doing 10% off now. It's very hard to get from your doctor. They're out of stock a lot. They're expensive. Titan's got a great deal on them. Normal price is a great deal. Now they're offering 10% off this week. So check it out. Tell them we sent you and get that great discount.
Let's go to the rest of our questions. We take questions from our Instagram, our YouTube community page, our various social media outlets. VIP Loft Decor. Never heard this before, but I've been hearing this recently. Some of these influencers claim that boldenon is directly kidney toxic. Is this true? I personally don't believe it.
Yeah. All anabolic steroids are metabolized by the liver. All of them. There's not a single one. There used to be this old wives' tale that trenbolone was kidney toxic. And it's not kidney toxic, but what trenbolone does is it raises blood pressure. So it indirectly can damage the kidneys, not directly. So there are drugs that are metabolized by the kidneys. Ibuprofen and everything like that is kidney toxic. But anabolic steroids are broken down by the liver, and all of them are broken down by the liver. The only, like I said, the only thing that can cause kidney issues in bodybuilders who take anabolic steroids is blood pressure increases, which happen with a lot of anabolics. The more water that the anabolic makes you hold, usually the higher your blood pressure will go. So always check your blood pressure. And if you need to, you take a mild ACE inhibitor like Ramipril, lisinopril while you're on cycle, just to keep that blood pressure normal so you don't damage those kidneys. But EQ, boldenon, whatever you want to call it, does not have direct kidney toxic effects. That's not true.
Let's go to Big Ant. What are the 2 biggest changes in nutrition and weight training you would have made when you were in prep? Now that if you go back to your career, some of the mistakes you may have made during prep that you would have corrected, knowing what you know now.
Yeah. I get this question a lot, and I've thought about it. The first half of my career, I didn't eat enough fat because I didn't know anything about fats, and so that was a correction that happened more in the second half of my career, and fiber. I didn't know anything about fiber. The last couple of years I was using fiber, but I was using Metamucil, which really was not a very, good fiber. It was better than nothing, but that's why I made Fiberlize, because I needed something that was better. And I did a lot of research into fiber, and I found out that there were different grades of psyllium, and the high swell rate psyllium, while the most expensive, is the most potent. And that's why when everyone uses Fiberlize, they're like, wow, it works better than all the other ones out there. Oh, because we put the best ingredients in it. I never claim to have the cheapest brand or the best deals. What I claim to have is the best products out there. And that's every product that we put out from Species Nutrition is the highest quality that money can buy. I don't care what the cost is, because I believe that bodybuilders and people who care about their health will spend a few extra dollars to have the best. And I'm not going to get the Walmart crowd. I understand that. And that's fine. That's my niche. My niche is to say I have the best stuff. And no one can say Dave doesn't have the best stuff. All they can say is, well, it's a little more expensive than everyone else's. And I think, once again, that's fine, because I spend more money on food products and any kind of products that I think are higher quality, because I want the best stuff, especially if I'm putting it into my body. I want the best stuff. And that's why the Fiberlize is so potent. I could certainly make a lot more money on it if I cheapen the product, but I'm just not going to do that, because I want to say I have the best. And so that's really, the mentality that you have to have in life, or at least I need to have in life, is to always put out the best quality stuff.
Let's go to GB. Help explain the following blood lab results: fasting glucose 96 mg/dl, fasting insulin 3.5 ULU ml, 54 years old, 234 pounds, eating high protein, low carb, higher good fats on TRT and 2 IUs GH daily. Why is my fasting glucose high?
Well, right off the bat, we can say we can blame growth hormone if we want to. But what he didn't tell us is what was his fasting blood sugar without the 2 IUs of GH a day. Remember, GH acts antagonistically to insulin, meaning it kind of inhibits it. So in order for your body to absorb blood sugars, and the reason why the fasting sugars go up first and the regular post-meal ones don't, is because when you're sleeping right before you wake up, your body releases an enormous amount of glucose from the liver, okay, to get your body ready for waking up. And if you're not producing enough insulin, whether it be because the beta cells can't produce enough, or they're producing as much as they can and GH is inhibiting some of that, it doesn't matter what the cause is, you'll wake up with high fasting blood sugars over 90. When you get to the high 90s and into the 100s, it starts getting to the dangerous level. Dangerous in the sense that long-term, you're going to start accumulating side effects, okay? You might not notice it short-term, but you'll notice it long-term. That's why we say to address it immediately. Now, if he wasn't taking the 2 IUs of GH, his natural insulin production might be enough that he might wake up in the night at 90, or under 90. Sometimes a little bit of GH can cause a lot of insulin resistance, or a little, antagonism to insulin. What's the solution? Well, if you want to stay on GH and you're in your 50s, because look, let's face it, when we I hate to say this, because it seems like a very negative thing to say, but it's very true. When you hit like your late 40s and early 50s, and then obviously late, or older than that, things just don't freaking work as well. I hate to admit it. My brain's working pretty good, but your body just doesn't recover as well. It doesn't heal itself as well. It doesn't produce as much insulin. And so it doesn't surprise me that someone in their late 40s, mid 40s, early 50s is running high fasting sugars. I see it all the time. It's amazing. I see it in young people too. And it's always in the young people who has a family history of it. So I'll get a guy like, 32, and he's like, I don't know why my fasting sugar is 105. And I'm like, do you have any diabetes in your family? Oh, my aunt has it, my mother has it, my grandmother has it. So they have a genetic predisposition for that. But there is a solution. And people think, I've read some of the comments on the video I did, about saying that Dorian's wrong about taking insulin. People might think I'm crazy, but you know what? When I get older, I'm not going to have dementia, and I'm not going to have side effects from high blood sugars, and you guys are. So insulin replacement is going to be the new testosterone replacement in 10 years from now. So I'm ahead of the curve. I've always been ahead of the curve. And you could agree with me or not agree with me. There's nothing wrong with taking a long-acting insulin. What you're doing is you're taking the burden off your pancreas, and you're lowering those fasting blood sugars, and you're giving the body your ability to do it. Why starve yourself? Why do I have to, at 0% body fat, not eat any carbs in my diet so that I can keep my fasting blood sugars normal? I'm not doing it. I want to eat. I can eat. I have a fast metabolism. I just don't produce enough insulin. So I take a long-acting insulin to compensate for that. This person in their 50s, if you want to take GH, knock yourself out, but you have a 96 fasting blood sugar. You're going to eventually accumulate side effects. Take a long-acting insulin with it, and that will bring that sugar, and it'll allow you to eat what you want. The question 2 questions ago, the guy had to say, I can't eat carbs before bed. If I do, I wake up high. If I don't, it's normal. Well, take a long-acting insulin. You can eat as many carbs as you want. As long as you're not fat, who cares? The problem is that people are not efficiently absorbing their calories either. I have guys that come to me, and they're not able to grow. They haven't grown for 3 years. I see their fasting sugars are a 110. We put them on a long-acting insulin, and guess what? They start growing all of a sudden because now they're efficiently absorbing their food. So there is a method to the madness, so to speak, from a health perspective and from a bodybuilding perspective. You could deny it or not deny it. I'm giving you guys the knowledge to do with what you want with it. Many doctors are not going to prescribe long-acting insulin. They just don't. They're not there yet. Just like they wouldn't prescribe testosterone replacement 20 years ago. Now it's like, everyone's on it. So, be ahead of the curve. That's what I tell people.
We have a question about Tirzepatide. I'm currently on a weekly dosage through my endocrinologist with Tirzepatide, Zepbound. My trainer coach told me that I'm not gaining any muscle due to the weight loss drug, even though I'm currently at 15% body fat. He said I need to stop it in order to gain real muscle. Any suggestions? Is this true regarding Tirzepatide?
Well, if you're on Tirzepatide, I'm assuming that you want to burn fat and get lean. So it goes back to the old conundrum. You can't do both at the same time. It's very hard to build muscle and burn fat at the same time. You can build a little bit of muscle and burn a little bit of fat, but you're going to sacrifice one or the other. So that's why we cycle our training and our diets. When we are doing weight gaining or muscle gaining diets, we're eating more food. We're wanting the food to move through our digestive tract quicker so we can absorb it faster and manipulate it, in which case you would not want to use a GLP agonist, which slows down the digestive tract and takes away your hunger. And then when you do diet, okay, and you want to burn off the body fat and maximize that, that would be the time to take Tirzepatide or Ozempic or something like that to then maximize your fat burning, prevent yourself from cheating, take away the appetite between meals. Those drugs do not affect muscle mass whatsoever. The reason people lose muscle on those drugs is because they don't eat enough protein and they starve themselves all day. And that's a problem. So as bodybuilders or physique athletes, we really don't fall into that category because we still keep our structured eating program with the GLP-1 agonist. And when you do that, you get good benefits. You lose fat, you maintain muscle. So these drugs themselves do not burn muscle. It's the lack of eating that burns muscle. When you're trying to grow, I wouldn't take these drugs because you're not going to have enough of an appetite. Unless you're just one of these guys that are just get fat by looking at food and you need something to temper you back a little bit, in which case that might be okay. But in most situations, I wouldn't recommend a GLP-1 in the off season.
Question from the Blonde Myth. Is it plausible that doing 4 calorie deficit days plus 3 calorie surplus days per week could be as effective or more effective than, say, cutting for a few months and bulking for a few months, aka, I guess, quote unquote, zigzag dieting?
Once again, we're going back to the same situation I just addressed. People are trying to do 2 things at the same time. They're trying to grow and burn fat at the same time. And when you do that, you don't do either one very effectively. You'll get a little bit of fat burning and you'll get a little bit of muscle building, but you kind of look almost the same, and then people feel frustrated because when you zigzag, you're going up and down and up and down and up and down. So you're gaining a little bit, then you're losing it. You're gaining a little bit, you're losing a little bit. You're not really moving anywhere. It's like walking up and down a flight of steps. Like you walk up 2 steps, you walk back 2 steps, you walk up 2 steps. So you're really in more of a maintenance phase when you're doing that. And so that's why I tell people, in order to gain, you have to be in a surplus, not a calorie surplus. You need to be in a macronutrient surplus, meaning you need extra protein, extra fats to build that muscle, enough carbs to fuel the process. When you're trying to diet and lose body fat, you need to be in a macro deficiency, meaning you need enough protein and fat to maintain muscle, but you need to be in a low enough amount of carbs so that you can burn fat and you use the fat as fuel instead of the carbs. And it's that simple. Don't make it more complicated than that. You can certainly, gain muscle without getting fat by not eating excessive amounts of carbs. but don't try to diet and get big at the same time. You're going to fail miserably.
I've been taking MK677 as soon as I wake up on an empty stomach. 30 minutes later, eat my pre-workout meal. Post-workout, I take a 10 mcg shot of IGF-1 LR3. There's about 3 to 5 hours in between the pill and injection. Is this the most optimal way of taking both of these at once, or would you do something differently?
What was the pill he's taking?
MK677, and then he's taking a shot of IGF-1 LR3.
I would probably take the MK677 in the morning, believe it or not, before breakfast, because it kind of makes you hungry, and your GH levels are naturally lowest in the morning. So post-workout, you're taking the IGF, so it's going to do nothing then. Before bed, you release GH at night, so you don't need it then. But I would take it in the morning when your body naturally doesn't produce GH, and make your body produce some growth hormone in that morning so that you can change that catabolic morning into an anabolic morning.
Hold on, I was literally on another page. I'll save this one to the end. It's about, all right, BCAA. Best time to take BCAA, and how effective are they for recovery? There seems to be some debate now as far as the overall benefits of taking BCAA.
Well, branched chain amino acids, turn on mTOR, which is the protein machinery that builds muscle, right? So you definitely want to turn it on post-workout. But, sometimes, if you're having a post-workout shake, then you don't really need the BCAAs then. In an off-season scenario, I like to drink branched chains, I use my Amino Evolved while I'm training. So I'll sip that while I'm training. So you constantly have a nice influx of amino acids. When you're dieting, you don't want to do that because your body will use those branched chains and the essential amino acids for energy. Okay. So, but off season, I'll drink it. I always have all my clients sip Amino Evolved while they're training throughout the workout. I'll drink it when I'm just hanging out, editing video or answering emails. I drink it during the day, just because maybe I might go a couple hours without eating until my next meal. Those are the times you want to do it. Between meals, intra-workout seems to be the best times to do it. You don't want to, like I said, do it post-workout because you're having a shake usually post-workout, or a meal. So it's really unnecessary. Sometimes if I was probably in today's world of like my trying to grow and stuff like that, I would probably have one of those branched chain amino drinks like Amino Evolved sitting by my nightstand. And when I would wake up in the morning when I wake up during the night to go pee, I'd probably be guzzling one of those down, because that's a good time too. At night, throwing some amino acids into the mix to give your body some raw materials to help repair muscle can't hurt. And those things get absorbed real easy. And it's not like they have to be digested or anything like that. So those would be the times that I'd use it: at night, intra-workout, between meals.
Question about, I guess, natural herbal alternative to steroids, specifically for recovery. Are there any natural medicines, herbs, vitamins that have similar effects to any steroids? Something that maybe helps with recovery. Have you or anybody tried to do that for any reason, and did it noticeably help with prep, recovery, training sessions, etc.?
I'll give you a Larry David answer. If you guys are Curb Your Enthusiasm fans, no. No.
All right. Simple, short and simple. Any validity, or your thoughts rather, on home brewing your own TRT?
I don't recommend it. I'll go on the record and say I don't recommend it. Don't make your own drugs. It's illegal, and you go to jail for that. Plus, the problem is not making the drugs. It's buying the raw materials from China and having it shipped to yourself. Not a good idea. Look, I always tell people, the money that you save making the drugs, you'll spend double that on lawyers when you get arrested. Okay, even if you don't go to jail and you just get have to hire a lawyer because you got a package in the mail that got confiscated, it's not worth it. Pay someone else to get. Believe me, let someone else make the money on you, because you know what? They're the ones who are going to have to hire the lawyers. I always say, if you got a good connection, buy it from someone else. Preferentially, if you can get it from a rejuvenation clinic, you're better off. I'd rather spend $100 and something on a bottle of testosterone from Titan Medical Center than have to go and try to find it from some guy in the gym, and then I have to test it to see if it's real, and then I'm worried if it's sterile, and then why bother? If you're on HRT, go get it from a clinic.
Question about protein intake. Explain why your high protein keto diet doesn't pull us out of ketosis via gluconeogenesis from the high protein intake.
Good question. I'll answer it before I'll answer it again because it's a good question. The medical ketogenic diet is a high fat, moderate protein, low carb diet. The reason being is that people who are, ostensibly have cancer and just regular people, so to speak, they don't work out. They don't break down a lot of muscle. They don't have an excessive need for protein. So for them, a moderate protein amount is good. They're not utilizing enough protein. If you don't utilize the protein that you're eating, guess what happens? Your body turns it into other stuff. And it can very easily turn it into carbs when you're on a ketogenic diet. And then your brain will use those carbs for fuel rather than go into ketosis. When you're working out hard and you're breaking down an enormous amount of muscle, at a bodybuilding diet, for instance, your body's protein requirement is much higher because you not only need the protein that you normally eat for hair, nails, skin, internal environment, like intestinal lining and hormones production, but you also have the excessive need now to repair all that damaged skeletal muscle from the gym training. Doesn't occur in a normal person. So a person who works out hard has a much higher protein requirement. They used to say, I remember in the 80s, they used to say, everyone needs the same amount of protein. You don't need any extra protein if you're an athlete, which was the most ridiculous thing of all time. You're breaking down all this muscle, but you don't need extra protein to repair it. So the bodybuilder needs a high protein, moderate fat diet because you need to at least have moderate fats to use as fuel, and then low carb if you want to be in ketosis. So you will not turn those amino acids from the protein that you're eating into glucose if you're using the protein as protein. I always say, people always ask me, how much protein is the most you can absorb? It used to be 30 grams is the most you can absorb. Then it went up to 40 grams is the most. You absorb every single gram of protein. So if you eat 180 grams of protein at one meal, you'll absorb 180 grams. It's what your body does with the 180 grams once it's in the bloodstream. If you have a high need for protein because you've broken down a lot of muscle, your body will use a lot of that. But 180 grams is way too much in one serving, and your body can't store protein. It doesn't have a facility to store it. It's not like fat can go into the fat cells. Glucose can go into glycogen storage in the muscles and the liver. Protein can't go anywhere, so it's got to be turned into something else. The first thing the body turns it into is carbs. Then the carbs can go into fat. So you don't want that to happen. So we figure out how much protein we need per meal based on our, number one, body weight, right? Because more body weight, more muscle breakdown, higher requirement for protein. Less body weight, less muscle, less need for protein. That's why we base it on what you weigh usually. And if you figure out how much protein you need, if you eat excessive amounts of that, then your body can turn that into glucose. That's why I have these, people on diets who they say they don't cheat because they're sticking to the diet food. But what they're doing is they're eating extra protein. I'm telling them eat 5 ounces, they're eating 10 ounces. And then what does the body do? It takes those 10 ounces and converts it into carbs and it stores as fat. And then they don't understand why they're not losing weight or they're gaining weight on the diet. Well, guess what? Yeah, you're not cheating on the diet in the sense that you're eating ice cream cake, but you're cheating in the sense that you're not sticking to the amounts of food that you have to have. And because of that, your body is utilizing that food for energy and or fat storage. So there's no free calories, but bodybuilders need a high protein diet, whether you do ketogenic, low carb, or moderate carb, you still need to eat high protein.
I've been bodybuilding for 2 years consistently at age 30, 6 feet tall, 220 pounds lean. Is it too late for me? If not, any advice would help. I'm making very good progress still with a low to moderate dose of test and deca.
If you have no injuries and you train hard and you eat right, you can grow at any age. What happens though, as we get older is our bodies are not as resilient. So sometimes it's hard to put on a lot of mass if you start at a later age. But look at Ronnie Coleman got a late start and he was phenomenal into his 40s. So it all depends, like I said, whether you have injuries or not. Now, young people usually don't have any injuries. That's why they can blast the crap out of their body in the gym. They recover well. Then they take anabolics on top of that. They grow. So most guys have their best gains in their 20s. However, I have seen people make gains in their 30s and 40s. Once again, it depends on whether you're injured or not and whether you can train with the intensity level and have the flexibility to be able to get full range of motion at an older age that you did at a younger age. But I say there's no limitations on what you can accomplish.
Take one more question. We do get a lot of questions about you and, like earlier in this show, what some of the things that you know now that you wish you could have applied during your own contest career, some of the mistakes that you could have corrected knowing what you know now. Well, this question is about challenges. What are some of the biggest challenges you have faced in your bodybuilding journey, and how have you overcome that? If you want to expand that between your competition career into everything that it is that you do now in business and obviously being a personality.
Life happens. I say it all the time. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. You're going to have things go wrong. You're going to get injured. You're going to need surgeries. You're going to have people die in your life. You're going to lose jobs. You're going to get jobs that maybe have very high time requirements. You have to be adaptable. You have to be able to find a way to get it done. And over the years, throughout my bodybuilding career, while I competed, my life had changed a lot, but I didn't use it as an excuse to not get the job done. You cannot use it as an excuse not to eat your meals, not to get to the gym, not to get enough sleep. Because if you use it as an excuse, then you're going to fail. And so the best advice I can give you is find a way to get it done, which means you have to be very organized. If you have a full-time job, you have to organize your meals. I had a friend, my friend Dave Watson, he worked at an auto mechanic shop all day long. The guy would pack his meals every morning or the night before. He was like you never miss a meal, this guy. He had protein shakes at his office, at his job, in case, he didn't have time to make a meal. He never missed a meal, and he worked full time his whole life and competed and was a big freaky guy and got a pro card. So you can be done. Ronnie Coleman was a cop, and he didn't miss meals and miss workouts. Look at how freaky he was. So when I see these people complain, oh, I got to go to work, I don't have time to eat, they don't let me eat that. You know what? You could always go to the bathroom. When I used to be in med school and I would work in the hospital and doing rotations, they didn't give you any breaks either. Everyone can go to the bathroom. I would go to the bathroom. I'd duck into the locker room there. I'd open my locker. I'd have a meal. I'd gobble it down, and I'd pee, and I'd wash my hands, and I'd go right back out, and I'm like good for another 2 hours. So you can get it done. You have to organize yourself, and you have to be prepared. Otherwise, if you don't prepare, you prepare to fail. I know it sounds like a trite saying, but it's 100% true.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder right now on the channel, chock full of Pittsburgh Pro content, as well as this week's After Hours, as well as Heavy Muscle Radio, as well as the all-new episode of the Dave Palumbo podcast. Dave Palumbo and John Romano talking about ways to get the prize money up to a staggering $25 million. A whole conversation on different things that can be done to get the Olympia to that level of payout. Very interesting conversation. Check it out on our channel right now. If you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss anything that we have on this channel, all the segments, all the shows, as well as chock full of contest coverage rather, that we're going to have over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.